I'm Commissioner Raquel Regalado, and thank you for spending your lunch break with us. As a former school board member, I love ed, and there's so many great things about our government that we want to educate you about before it's a problem. So this is a series where we deep dive into all things Miami-Dade County, bring along our partners, and share some knowledge and some opportunities with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And DJ will share screen. So I just want to say thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Lauren Janitis, and I'm the Executive Director of Tropical Audubon Society. And I just want to say on behalf of our board, our staff, and volunteers, we're so happy to welcome you to today's session of Birding 101. So I do want to begin by just extending our thanks to the Office of Miami-Dade County Commissioner Raquel Regalado for hosting today's webinar. We are very grateful for this opportunity to partner with the office and to connect with so many residents who care about the natural world around them. Next slide, DJ. So for those who might be new to Tropical Audubon, we are a local nonprofit dedicated to protecting birds and their habitat that depend on that through science-based conservation, advocacy, and our education programs. So our mission is to conserve and restore South Florida ecosystems with a focus on birds, other wildlife, and their habitats that they rely on. So we do everything from safeguarding wetlands and coastal ecosystems to inspiring the next generation of environmental stewards. And our work is really rooted right here in South Florida. So you could scan the QR code on your screen and you can learn more about Tropical Audubon Society. That QR code would take you to our website. I do encourage you to sign up for our newsletter and stay connected with us and our work. Next slide.
Before you continue, Lauren, my apologies.
Sure.
I always forget. Questions, please use the Q&A tool and we'll address the questions at the end. And everybody that registered will be getting the link to the YouTube so you guys can review this afterwards as well.
Thank you. Perfect. All right, and just back into our work at Tropical Audubon. So we span everything from education, community engagement, and conservation work. So we have a wide range of programs really designed to connect people of all ages. So we have our ambassador program and our high school ambassador program, which is a free program that empowers volunteers and students to become environmental leaders. So you could find out more about that on our website. We also have our CHIRP program, which is our youth education initiative that introduces children to birds and nature through hands-on learning. We host a series of field trips throughout South Florida, birding field trips, which is all on our website again. And, we really want to offer people the opportunity to explore our local habitats alongside our experienced birders. We also have our conservation concerts. I'm not sure if a few of you, maybe you attended our concerts. It's held on the last Saturday of the month at our nature center right off of Sunset Drive. And this really brings the community together through music in support of our mission. We also have our historic Doc Thomas house, which you could see in the picture on the slide. This was built in 1932. It's our headquarters, and we offer house tours that really talk about the site's rich history and the role of the conservation efforts locally that we put forward at this house. And so also I just want to say alongside these programs, we have our advocacy work, and that's really focused on protecting critical habitats, wetlands, and ecosystems all across South Florida. And we engage through science-based policy discussions and standing up for responsible land use decisions. Next slide, DJ. So we have a small but mighty team. This is our team right here on the slide. And, today's webinar is really a wonderful example of our mission and how we put our mission into action. So I'm really excited to have our education director here, Daniel, or he likes to be called DJ, lead today's session. DJ will offer a fun and really accessible primer of how you get started with birding in Miami. And either if you're completely new or curious or looking up to brush on the basics, DJ will cover it today. He'll also share some details about our Bird Day event, which is this Saturday. It's a family-friendly outdoor festival, that celebrates birds, nature, and our community. So again, it's this Saturday. So thank you again for being here with us today. And for taking the time to learn more about birds that share this incredible place with us. And so with that, I'm happy to turn it over to DJ to get us started. DJ, you take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for the introduction. Thank you so much to Commissioner Regalado for virtually hosting us today, and to all of her wonderful staff to help make this possible and make this work. Again, my name is DJ Modazenik. I proudly serve as the Education Director with Tropical Audubon Society, and I am really excited to be here today with all of you because I get to talk about something that I'm super passionate about, something that I really enjoy, and that is the world of birding, especially down here in Miami-Dade County. So as Lauren mentioned, this is going to be a primer. It's going to be more like a birding 101, right? So if you have an interest or you think you might have an interest in birding, this is going to be all about information that'll allow you to take the next steps into the birding world, which is a lifelong adventure. It never gets boring and it never stops. So it really is a wonderful thing to get into here. So it kind of sounds silly to start with just saying what is birding, but it really is a more complicated topic for a lot of people. I've had a lot of people come up to me at the end of a birding hike and say, "Oh, I'm not a birder. I was just out, looking for hawks or owls or something." And it's like, well, then you're a birder, because all birding is, there are many different definitions, but my favorite is just experiencing and enjoying wild birds. If you're somebody who likes to be around birds, likes to look for them and identify them, you are a birder. Doesn't matter how skilled you are. Doesn't matter if you can identify 3 species. Doesn't matter if you can identify 1,000 species, right? So anybody who likes to enjoy and experiencing birds is a birder. And it is something that is a multi-billion-dollar industry. There are thousands and thousands of people that go birding, millions probably, and it really is something that is a great way to connect yourself to the natural world. And as a conservation organization, establishing that connection with the natural world, getting to know the feathered friends and other life forms around you, that's a way that you can really build that connection and then feel a desire to protect and then to serve those natural spaces. So we really firmly believe education is the foundation of conservation work, and birding is a great way to form that connection. Now, with that being said, a really big aspect of birding, of course, is bird identification. Birding, after all, is going out to find and identify birds, and it's a lot of fun. It could be kind of like a puzzle in a way, trying to figure out which bird you're looking at and learning about them. So what I first wanted to start with was actually talking about the primary categories, the characteristics that we take into account when we are identifying birds out in the field, right? So some of them are a bit more simple, a bit more obvious. Others are a little bit more complicated. But it's important to think about these different categories. And the more you go out there, whether it's your backyard, down the street where you live, out in Everglades National Park, you'll start to be able to learn these characteristics and know what to look for more and more, and just kind of build onto your birding skill set here. So this is a roseate spoonbill, a quintessential South Florida bird here. And perhaps its most substantial, of those characteristics that I mentioned, of course, is the color of the bird. So color is a huge category for identification. It's something that our eyes are pretty good at picking up. It's something that we remember, especially something like this, a pink bird, right? I mean, that's really going to stick in your memory. So that is a characteristic, one of those categories that is really important when it comes to identifying birds. But there are more. We're going to go through the 5 main ones here. So we'll move on to this next bird here. This is a ruby-throated hummingbird, and color, of course, does play a role. For instance, we can say that this hummingbird lacks the ruby-colored throat, meaning that this is a female, right? So the color can tell us different things about that bird. But what's really unique amongst hummingbirds that a lot of you know? There's a few things, but you may understand the hummingbirds are the smallest group of birds out there, right? So that's what leads us directly into our second of the categories, which is size and shape, right? This bird is about the size of my thumb, and it's a small bird, and that's something that is pivotal. That is something that can help you identify them out in the field. When you branch off of that and move into shape, you're also talking about those kind of sharp, pointy wings, that long beak that the hummingbird has, right? So size is a good example of how you can identify a hummingbird, amongst other things. So you can kind of see how these all build on top of each other. These are different characteristics you can take into consideration with identifying any bird. So we're just going through the 5 different kinds here. I did want to also mention the concept of field marks, and this is really important when it comes to identifying birds, right? Because the color, the size, and the shape, these are the very specific details that can allow you to distinguish one bird from another, especially if they're extremely similar, right? You're looking for these really specific field marks. It's very easy, and for the longest time when I started birding, bird identification for me was almost like a quick visual memory. You kind of have a visual image in your head of what a bird looks like, but what you want to do is actually remember the wording, remember what the field marks are, how they're described to help you identify a bird. And I know that's kind of hard to visualize, so let's walk through a couple different field marks right now. So this is a prothonotary warbler, a beautiful bird species. This photo was taken in the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge in Georgia. And I'm going to walk you through some field marks here because it's so easy to look at this bird and just go, it's yellow, right? But you want to be able to really narrow it down to the specifics. So you would say that it has an unmarked, brilliant yellow head, right? So you're being specific about the head. You're letting us know that the entire head is yellow. It doesn't just have a yellow cap or something along those lines. Move over to our next one is a brilliant yellow throat and chest, right? So that yellow coloration extends down to the chest. It's not just the head. You can also then point out some different characteristics, right? The large, dark bill. Do you see how specific you are when you're talking about field marks? This is what really helps you get down to identifying it. And for a bird like the prothonotary warbler, a lot of times that yellow is enough, but when it comes down to other sparrows, other warblers, you really got to pay attention to those specific field marks. Another one is a small bead-like black eye, right? You're paying attention to those small details. And it's important to note that yellow chest does fade to a clean white color on the belly. It's not just like a uniform yellowish color there, right? So there we have it for our prothonotary warbler. We have some of the different field marks. And we'll move on to this bird here, the great horned owl, right? This is a very iconic bird. It's actually my favorite bird. It's my spark bird, the bird that got me into birding here. And when you're talking about great horned owls, we can look at some of the field marks as described, right? We can see it has yellow eyes, but large dark pupils. We can see that it has a feather tuft coming off the side of its head. It's not an ear, it's not a horn, it's just a tuft of feathers, right? You can see that it has this kind of brownish orange facial disc around the eyes. And it also has a black liner around that facial disc. It has a white color on the throat, right? That happens to be more exposed when they're hooting. So this is a good example of field marks. But the thing is, when you're talking about great horned owls, sometimes when you see them or not see them, it looks like this, right? So if you're out in the field at nighttime, a lot of times you can't see what you're looking at. So at that point, how are you going to learn to identify this bird? Well, there's another way. So what you just heard, everybody, hopefully heard if the sound went through okay, was you just heard a call of two great horned owls duetting. The one that was higher pitched, that was the female. The one that was lower pitched, that kind of started off the call, is the male. That's how the vocal dynamics work in the owl world. So we used sound to identify that bird. And that is a very important skill to learn because it's not just about the nocturnal birds, but it can also be, there's a bird up in the canopy of the trees and I can't see who it is because of the leaves. But when that bird sings, that now allows me to, I know who it is now, right? And it's really fun because once you start to learn the sounds little by little, it starts to unlock what's happening around you in the natural world. You'll know that these birds over here are agitated about something. Then you'll hear a hawk and understand why they're agitated. And it really just kind of changes how you see nature around you. So birding by ear is tough, but it's an important factor when it comes to bird identification. So I wanted to jump into sounds a little bit more because of how important it is and talk about three, main types of sounds that the birds make. So I'll bring up our prothonotary warbler friend again, and you can see that that large dark beak of the prothonotary warbler is open. And that's because when I took this photo, this bird was singing. That's the first category of bird sound. Singing is a method for trying to attract mates, establishing territory, communicating with others that, this is my spot. And because it's very involved with the breeding season and that time of the year, this tends to be a more seasonal thing, right? Birds tend to not just sing year round. They're really going to start singing when the breeding season arrives. So that is singing, their song. The next one here, this is called a call. So these are ways that birds can kind of communicate with each other, alert danger. Blue jays and crows, that whole family, the corvid family, ravens, crows, blue jays, they get super agitated if there's a predator around. And I love photographing owls like that great horned owl that I photographed at Long Pine Key. And one of the ways I find them, because they're hard to find, is by listening for the blue jays. Because if the blue jays find them first, they'll go absolutely berserk because they're calling to each other, alerting each other of danger. And the reason why I have this picture of a common gallinule here is because Lauren was actually with me when I took this photo, and we noticed that the parent of these baby gallinules, like this fluffy baby that you see, this chick here in the water, was like freaking out. And we were kind of like, man, what's going on? Why is the parent going so crazy? And then we looked over on the other side of the boardwalk, and there was the biggest American alligator I've ever seen. I'm like, well, you know, that's why they were agitated. The parent was warning the chicks, right, of danger. And just to let you all know, the alligator did not get any of the chicks. The parent did a great job of warning its family there. So that brings us to our third type of sound now. This actually isn't any kind of a vocalization. It's something that you see with woodpeckers. And I like to say woodpeckers can't sing. They're really bad singers. They don't know how to, but they can certainly drum. And that's the drumming that woodpeckers do. So when you hear, if you're out in the woods or a thicket and you hear that very fast, rapid drumming, anything from a smaller downy woodpecker to our big pileated woodpecker here, that is for communication. Think about it, right? If you were trying to hammer into a tree to get into some grubs or get some insects like this pileated woodpecker was doing here, you wouldn't be taking a lot of fast, small, hammer strikes. You would be more powerful and more methodical and slower with your hammer strikes. That's when a woodpecker's looking for food, when they have this kind of slow, methodical tapping into the tree. But when it's a really fast one, that's their way of saying, hey, this is my territory. So when people say, hey, DJ, I had a pileated woodpecker and it was drumming on the gutter of my house. Why is it doing that? I go, well, that pileated woodpecker sounds like it's the boss, because when it pecks on that gutter, it's super loud, right? And it lets all the other woodpeckers know that this is my spot here. So those are the three main types of sounds. And that's a big part of identification here. Now, the others are a little bit more complicated maybe to think about at first. Kind of hard to think about how this might help you identify a bird. But I want you all to imagine this. You're out on Biscayne Bay, and you look off into the distance, and up in the air, pretty far away, is this large bird. You're trying to look for the field marks to help you identify it, but because it's off in the distance, you can't see any field marks. It honestly just looks like a silhouette. It's up in the sky, it's backlit, lighting's not great, and it's far away. Can't see any field marks, and it looks like it has a wingspan of about 6 feet, but I will say, trying to judge size in the field, especially when birds are further away, can be quite challenging. Say you're not sure what this bird is. You just see a big bird flying near the bay. All of a sudden, this bird decides to just start hovering above the water. You're like, man, look at that. What's it doing? Then before you know it, it's plummeting down to the water at immense speeds, and it lands into the water, feet first, talons first, and you see it stuck in the water for a second. Then it uses its powerful wings to eject itself from the water with the fish in its talons, and then it goes over and perches in a mangrove tree to have that fish for lunch. How did you know that that bird that you saw was in fact an osprey? Because of the behavior. So behavior can let us know what we're looking at as well. A turkey vulture might be a big bird with a 6-foot wingspan too, but it's not going to go plummeting talons first into the water. You might think a bald eagle, but they don't plunge into the water with their talons first. They'll kind of just fly and then snatch a fish on the wing without actually crashing down into the water. So behavior, something as obvious as that can be a clue, but sometimes it's a subtle detail. Palm warblers, a very common warbler. They're all around this time of the year in wintertime here in South Florida. They bob their tail up and down. That's something that can tell you, hey, that's probably a palm warbler you're looking at. Spotted sandpipers do it as well. And as you are out more and you're kind of noticing the birds around you, you'll start to pick up on the little behavioral things that they do. How do they go up and down that tree? Are they walking upside down the tree? Is this bird able to hang upside down? How is it hunting, right? You'll start to kind of clue into these behaviors. Like a flycatcher, they'll perch on a branch and then they'll fly, do all these acrobatic motions in the air, snatching up an insect, and then return back to that perch. Versus like a purple martin, one of our swallows, they're going to just fly around and catch insects on the wing in a continuous flight pattern. So these behaviors can clue you in as well. And that will now bring us to our fifth and final category for bird identification. I know we're spending a lot of time on these, but it's really important to think about them. It's kind of the foundation for bird identification. And the great example that I have for this last one is our Florida scrub jay, because this bird is endemic to the state of Florida. Now, what does endemic mean? It means that it's found nowhere else on Earth. So if I'm up back in Okefenokee Swamp and I think I see a Florida scrub jay, I'm not seeing a Florida scrub jay, or at least there's a very, very good chance I'm not, because I would be outside of that bird's range. Having knowledge of the range of the bird you're looking for, where they live, can help you identify it. I may really, really think I saw an ostrich in Everglades National Park, but where that's well outside of their range, right? So it's really helpful to learn the ranges of the different birds. And what makes it more challenging is the range is seasonally dependent. So birds will be at some place in the spring, maybe a different place in the wintertime. So it's really cool to kind of learn that pattern, right? And then that also goes side by side with habitat. I might be in the state of Florida. I might be at Jonathan Dickinson State Park, the very state park where I got this photo. But when I'm paddling down the Loxahatchee River, I'm probably not going to see a Florida scrub jay hopping around the mangroves, because the Florida scrub jay loves the scrub habitat. That's where it gets its name, right? So it's a habitat specialist. It really wants to be in the scrub. It's probably not going to be out in the mangrove, near the Loxahatchee River at Jonathan Dickinson State Park. So it's important to understand the habitat and how specific they are to those habitats. Now, great blue heron, I could see it in a cypress swamp. I could see it in a mangrove forest. You could see them in a canal on the side of the road, a retention pond, or your front yard. They're a little bit more of a habitat generalist. Now, I will say, though, when it comes to this fifth category, the habitat and range, a word of caution. And that's just because birds and their ability to fly, sometimes they can show up in the craziest places. So here's a couple photos. That anhinga, very common bird for down here, was photographed in western New York in January. That's frozen water that you see underneath it. That's ice. So that anhinga was lost. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I heard the reports. I drove all the way out there to see. So you have some crazy things that happen from time to time. That snowy owl photographed in Buffalo, that's a traditional snowy owl landscape. They breed up in the Arctic. In 2014, I think it was, one showed up near Fernandina Beach in North Florida. Snowy owl. So you get these kind of crazy things that happen. So it's important to understand the range, but just know that sometimes we get some wild events in the bird world due to their ability to fly. So now that we've gone through the methods of identification, we got to talk about gear, right? What do you need to go birding? What's really important? So there's a few different things to mention here, and it's really going to depend on where you're going, how long you're going, what type of birding you're doing. It's always going to vary, but I have kind of 5 main things that you want to take with you when you go birding, right? And I'm just going to mention 2 of them here because we're going to go into a little bit more depth with some of the other ones. So the first, of course, snacks and water. It's really important, especially if you're going to be out for a while, especially with down here in South Florida with how hot it gets. You want to make sure you're well fed, you have the energy to do what you need to do, and that you're well hydrated. Now, it's probably not important if you're, just going behind your office or where you work or something on your half-hour lunch break, unless it's really hot, but it's something to really take into consideration. Do I have enough to sustain my energy and my hydration throughout the time that I'm out there, right? The other that I wanted to touch upon here is appropriate clothing, and especially for where we are in South Florida, where we could get a lot of rain, it could be really hot. As we saw the last few days, it could be really cold, right? Or you could be in an area that has a lot of mosquitoes. You could be in an area that might have fire ants on the ground. You could be in an area that's dry. You could be walking somewhere where you're going through water if you're in a cypress swamp. So it really helps to do your homework of where you want to go beforehand so you can understand what the conditions are like, what to expect, how you should prepare, and also you can find out what birds you might see in that area. Already give you a clue as to, oh, these are the rare birds I might see here. I really want to look for them. These are the birds I should expect to see. Doing your homework before you go out really can help. Just a 20-minute, time on the internet, utilizing the internet and all the different resources that we have now for birding can really help make a difference. And now I'm going to hop into the most important aspect of birding, gear. As far as gear is concerned, the optics, right? And I'll talk about binoculars, which are the most important, and a spotting scope on the next slide. But I did just want to mention camera. And if you are someone who has a camera that has any kind of zoom, yes, it's nice to take pictures of birds for fun. That's a great hobby, but it really helps you at bird identification, because if I see a warbler that I can't identify, which happens a lot, and it's jumping around, atop the trees, and I'm looking at my binoculars and I can't get a good look at it, but it holds still for just a second. If I'm able to photograph that bird, and the second that it's holding still, then I can take that photo, I can come home, I can blow it up on my laptop and take my time, use my field guide, and figure out which bird that is. right? So cameras can also be a really important tool for bird identification, as well as, helping you with wildlife photography. So let's get to the two main optics though. Of course, binoculars, probably the single most essential item when it comes to birding. They're versatile, they vary in cost. You can have entry-level binoculars that aren't pricey all the way up to really fancy binoculars to help you out, right? And they are a lot easier to use. And if you're someone who's just getting into birding, I recommend buying the size 8x42, so the 8x42, that's the zoom and the field of view, because if you get something that has a lot of zoom, if you're not used to using binoculars, it can be difficult to find your target. You'll see the heron in the distance, but once you pull up your binoculars, it might be challenging to actually find where it is. So 8x42 is a pretty good starting range. I'd also recommend not buying, expensive binoculars if it's your first time, because as you are individually, you're going to have different preferences. Are your binoculars too heavy? Or did you think they might not be, and then you hiked for a mile out in the field and you thought, oh, maybe these are a little too heavy? Are they too light? You figure, hey, I can get bigger and a better pair of binoculars. I can handle the heavier weight. You want to make sure they're robust enough for the type of birding that you do. I break binoculars a lot. So when I buy a pair, I try to get a really, really tough pair because I'm inevitably going to drop them while I'm climbing a tree or something along those lines. So it's important to, kind of work your way, if you're just getting into it, into what type of a birder you are, what type of birding that you like to do. Now, a spotting scope, on the other hand, that's kind of taking it up another level. You can see the whole setup includes the scope and a tripod, right? It's cumbersome. You're not going to really be slogging through, a cypress swamp or something like that, or hiking a long distance with a tripod and a scope. You can, it just might not be ideal for what you want to do, depending on what that is. But the great thing about the scopes is that they have the long to extra long range viewing. So if you're at, Flamingo and Everglades National Park and you're trying to spot their namesake birds, flamingos, out in Florida Bay, a spotting scope is what you want, because it gives you that maximum range. And with it being on a tripod, you can look at that bird and then it's positioned perfectly on the bird itself. You don't got to hold it up constantly like you do with a pair of binoculars. The longer you're zoomed in, right, the more any little bit of shaking with your hands totally distorts your field of view. So if I have a spotting scope that's zoomed way out there and I'm trying to hold it, it's going to be very hard to keep it on that target. So that's where you get a tripod. So binoculars are definitely the starter. Scope is a little bit more situational, right? A little bit more specific types of birding require a scope or could really benefit from a scope. So those are the two main kind of optics there. Moving on now to field guides. And man, these resources, they've totally changed over time, and now we can do a lot more things on the internet, which we'll talk about soon. But this is really kind of the starter for getting into birding, is getting yourself a field guide. Now, there's a lot of different kinds. Some of them utilize the color of birds to help you access the field guide and identify the bird. Others are sorted by bird families, how they're classified. So they got a lot of different ways here. And the first field guide I ever had was the Peterson Field Guides to Eastern Birds. It was this exact one. I needed it for my ecology course during my undergrad, and it cost me like $3.50 used on eBay. So it was great, right? And it helped me go out in the field and identify different birds. Now, I like having a guide to Eastern birds because I'm all over the place. I live down here in Miami, but I go to Okefenokee Swamp. I go to North Carolina. I go to Western New York. So it's helpful to have the field guides cover the range of either where you're going or what you're interested in. You might not ever go out west, but you might want to know what birds live out there. So you might want to buy a Western field guide. So there are some that are, a little bit more broad. You can get an Eastern guide, a Western guide, a North American guide, or you can be a little bit more specific, like this Birds of Florida guide by Kirsten Himes. This is a great guide for talking about Florida birds specifically. And there are a few different ways you can use field guides. Some field guides are a little bit more tailored to actually going out in the field, and whilst in the field, accessing, the field guide and trying to figure out what you're looking at. But that can be really hard. You have binoculars in one hand, you got your field guide in the other, the bird's moving, and it's not really a great combination there. So what I like to recommend doing is you bring a journal with you. I really like these Write in the Rain ones because they're weatherproof, right? And when you see a bird, jot down the field marks. Write what it's doing, right? Oh, it just ate a spider, Oh, it's spending a lot of time at the tops of the trees. Oh, it's not holding still for very long. write what it's doing. Write down the field marks. It has a black stripe through its eye. It has a brown cap on top of its head. And then when you're at home later, or out in the field right afterwards, when the encounter is fresh in your mind, you can refer to your memory and your notes and take your time through a field guide and properly identify that bird there. So that's the way that you can use field guides to figure out what you're looking at. They're very helpful. Field guides are a must when you're learning about birds. Now, I will say, I mentioned, what do you need to go birding? Now, those items that I just mentioned are extremely helpful. They're something that can really help you with birding. They're the quintessential gear when it comes to birding. But if you want to really get down to talking about what you absolutely need, you don't need anything. And that's part of why it's so great, is because anybody with anything can be a birder and enjoy birds. And the classic example I like to give is, my grandmother. She was big into birds when I was younger. She loved listening to the call of American robins when they returned in the springtime and everything. But during the later years of her life, she couldn't really move around. She certainly couldn't drive or, do those sorts of things. So I would go out in the morning. I would drive my car to a forest, hike through the woods, bring my binoculars and my camera, look for an owl, and then I'd go stop by and talk to my grandma after, and we'd go birding by looking at the birds outside of her window together. So, you don't need anything. There are just things that are certainly very helpful for when you do go birding. So I just wanted to touch on that because part of the thing that makes birding so great is the accessibility of it. So I wanted to kind of take our newfound skills and put them to use a little bit here with a bird identification mystery. So I have a bird that is a type of ibis here, and I'll give you a couple minutes. I figured that, hey, you're out in the field and you figured out through your field guides that what you're looking at is some type of ibis, right? But you're not quite sure what kind it is. So I took 3 descriptions, like a description you may find in a field guide, and just put it about the 3 different types of ibis. This is one of them. And I just want to give you maybe like a minute to kind of glance through the descriptions and see if you can determine through a field guide which bird you're looking at by looking at the words. Because again, the pictures are helpful. To look at a picture and to, look at the bird that you're looking at, that's very helpful. But when you're talking about specific field marks, it can be helpful to get them in writing, right? To understand. That'll help you really be able to visualize those field marks here. So I'll give maybe about 30 seconds or so to just kind of glance through and see what we can find out.
And we have some responses already in our question and answer area.
Oh, we do. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Let's see. How are they looking, Lauren? Are they looking like they're passing?
Looks like they're passing.
Hey! So, this is an easier example for the folks that are saying glossy ibis. You are correct, right? But the reason why I wanted you to kind of get that practice doing it is because when you look at the glossy ibis description, at the last 2 lines, right? And a dark face outlined by a narrow, pale blue-gray border during the breeding season. Now, if I just looked at a picture, this picture of the glossy ibis for, 10, 20 seconds, or if I looked at one out in the field, and then Lauren asked me a question such as, hey, what color was the border outside of its face? I would have no idea because my eye didn't pick up something that specific. But now that I read about it, I know to look for that when I'm out in the field. And the presence of that blue-gray border will tell me, hey, it's the breeding season for the glossy ibis. So that's why it's important to do those types of things. Now, we're going to get into our next bird identification mystery here. This one is going to be different. It's going to be auditory along with reading. So imagine you're in a scene like this. This is at the Big Cypress National Preserve one evening. So you're out, on a trail. It's getting kind of dark, right? It's a beautiful setting, and you're really listening. And all of a sudden, you hear this sound. And what we're going to do is really carefully listen and try to remember what you just heard, because then you're going to get some description and try to match up with the words with what you heard. It's very easy to hear something and go, oh, when I get home, I'm going to, look up what it was. And then by the time you get home, you forget what that sound was, right? It's very easy to do that. So practice on really listening. And then I'm going to show you the next slide. There's going to be 2 possibilities of what it could be. You got to pick the right one. So here we go. So that's your mystery sound. And then you have it narrowed down to these two birds here. We have a barred owl and a barn owl. So there's the description. Field guides oftentimes have the descriptions of the sounds that you heard. So using that description, see if, you went home, you're kind of reading about the owls, and you're trying to figure out which owl made that sound based on the noise that was created here. And I'll play it one more time. So, all right, I'm seeing some answers in the chat. I also see a question. We'll do a Q&A at the end, but I will address this question now. Do you recommend using your phone to record descriptions, or would that make noise and scare the bird? The actual, I'm not sure what your phone is like, but the actual recording process through your phone isn't going to really make any noise. Now, playing noises back out in the field, especially during the breeding season, that's discouraged, because while birds are out there hustling, trying to survive, they're stressed out because they're setting up their territories. If I go out there and I play a bird call, that bird doesn't realize it's my phone. It thinks there's an invader in its territory, and it'll come in all stressed out looking for it. And, that's used ethically in certain situations for studies. I like to do owl prowls where I'll go out and hoot like an owl, but I really limit those, and I try to go to different areas and use them for educational events. But I'm glad you asked that question, and the reason why I want to address it now is, you don't want to go out there and just be playing bird recordings, especially during the breeding season there. So, for those of you who may have said the barred owl, you are correct. And that is the call of the swamp. That is a really common owl down here. And I hear them a lot more than I see them. So that's why that birding by sound is really important there. And yeah, what's funny is all these different sayings and mnemonics for the noises, the calls, the songs that birds make. For the barred owl, it's who cooks for you all. A lot of people hear that. I hear that with the call too, but with other birds, it's indistinguishable. So it's fun to kind of explore and see those different options. Now, I will say this. We just did it the old school way, right? By looking at a field guide. There are different resources now, like Merlin, which is an absolute game changer. I remember all the hype when Merlin came out, and it was totally true, and it has only gotten better since. It's almost like something out of science fiction where you just hit a record button on this app through the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and it will identify the birds that you're hearing in real time with some pretty good accuracy. So how it works is you hit recording, and it's got to be able to hear it pretty well. If it's a really quiet bird off in the distance, or if somebody's using Merlin and I'm constantly talking near them, which happens a lot, the recording won't be able to pick up, the song. But if it can hear it well, it'll show you what bird it thinks it is. If there's 5 birds going on at once, it'll list the 5 birds, and then whichever one it hears again, if a cardinal then calls again, it'll flash the cardinal that's already on the screen. And what's really great is that, so say you hear a sound and it says Carolina wren. You can then click the Carolina wren and listen to the different vocalizations of a Carolina wren, compare it to your recording, and then confirm whether or not what you just heard was a Carolina wren. So, this app really is awesome. It really helps you with identifying birding by ear, which is a harder skill. But with this app, and a lot of birders have it, most of them, it's a game changer when it comes to birding by ear. It also can help with photo ID. You can snap a bird photo, pull one from a camera roll, and it'll offer a short list of possible matches that can help you. So I had to flag Merlin because it's a great way to help learn your birding sounds by ID. So I want to hop in now before we get to Q&A and talking about eBird. I wanted to just talk about some community science programs, right? Like eBird, which is also run through the Cornell Lab, because this is a great resource. There is an online course that you can go through that'll teach you how to use eBird. It's not real complicated, but it's great because it allows an amateur birder, someone like me, to contribute to the science that ornithologists are doing, out in the field, out at their lab, wherever they're working. Because what happens is, when I encounter, a Carolina wren or a northern cardinal or something, I can upload that bird sighting and the location. So then you have a lot of birders going out creating these checklists through eBird, and now ornithologists are able to use that data from people like me. I'm not an ornithologist, and they're able to do studies on migration. Oh, look, it looks like the ruby-throated hummingbirds appeared later this year or earlier this year. It allows them to get clues into what's happening seasonally. It helps them understand population dynamics. So it's really a great tool. And they have an eBird app now where you can go out in the field, you can hit start checklist, easily select the birds that you see, right? And then hit submit. It'll also track your exact route. So for you, you'll know exactly where you went, where you encountered those birds. So it really is an awesome way. It's also a way where it'll help you alert you to the birds that have arrived for the season or what birds are being seen around you. So you can kind of have a sense for who you can look for. I will say though, just with respect to the birds and ethics, that there are certain sensitive things. Like if I found an eagle nest in an area, I might be reluctant to upload its exact location because I wouldn't want a ton of people to come and harass this bird, right? Same with an owl nest. I don't want to put the exact location of an owl nest or something using eBird. So I want to make sure that I'm just kind of careful. I'll use a general area, a general park or something for those types of things. And you just want to make sure that you're kind of sensitive about that. And then on the other end, as a user, if you're like, hey, I want to find a great horned owl and you're looking on eBird for owl locations, just make sure that you view the birds properly from a respectable distance. That's why binoculars are so important, so you can do that. And also make sure the places that you're going to are places you're allowed to go to, right? So you want to make sure that you're doing those types of things ethically. iNaturalist, I wanted to flag, is very similar, but it's with all life, right? It's not just with birds. So it's what you can do with plants, insects, reptiles. And the difference of iNaturalist is it's based on the individual sightings. It's not as much of a big checklist as eBird is, so it will get the precise location. So for different iNaturalist projects where it's really important to know the exact location, iNaturalist is really important for that. If I'm out there and I make an eBird checklist, yeah, people will know that I saw a belted kingfisher, but they're going to know that it's on that 5-mile hike that I did somewhere. But if you're doing a survey where they want the exact location, iNaturalist is very helpful with that. So eBird and iNaturalist, I highly recommend you check them out. And now that we've gotten through our intro to birding 101, and talked about all those resources, I want to talk about Bird Day. So this is our super fun event taking place this Saturday, February 7th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. It is a free, family-friendly event. Youth and their parents are invited to this event. It's a bird festival. It features an awesome afternoon with different bird-themed games, prizes, exploration. There are environmental education activities. There's hopefully going to be a raptor release. So a bird that has been rehabilitated by one of our local wildlife rehabbers is going to be released. So there's opportunities to see live birds. It's a very fun day filled with games and a way to connect with the various conservation groups, because we have a lot of conservation partners that come to Bird Day, and they will have a table. They will be running activities. So it's a great way to connect with Tropical Audubon, to learn about birds through fun activities, and to connect with some of our awesome conservation partners, these local conservation groups that really make Bird Day special. So activities like owl pellet dissections, nature journaling, a game where you're pretending to eat like a bird with different beaks and bills as tools. So it's really a fun day. It's our big educational event of the year at Tropical Audubon Society. Lauren mentioned that link to the QR code to our website. You can go to our website and register for Bird Day. Please register. And I would love to see all of you there at our Bird Day event this Saturday. I'm really excited about the event, and it's going to be a great day. And fortunately, the weather report says it will have warmed up substantially by then. So we're looking pretty good for Bird Day. So hope to see y'all there. If you can't make Bird Day, but you'd like to get involved with Tropical Audubon Society, I just wanted to give information about a few of the different birding trips that we have that are coming up next. But we do a lot of birding field trips all over South Florida. So be sure to visit our website, give it a look to see our field trips, see if any interest you or what you can attend. I also want to mention that we just started doing youth field trips, oriented for youth ages 10 through 17 as a more birding 101 intro to birding thing to get students and younger kids out in the field and teach them how to go birding. So we have our birding field trips that are more for adults, a little bit more advanced, and then we have our youth birding trips as well. So we have a lot going on in the bird world at Tropical Audubon Society. I know we'll be taking some questions at the end. So I just wanted to say, please keep in touch with us. There's a QR code to our website again. if you wanted to give that a scan, check out the different things that we do, sign up for our newsletter. Here's different ways you can interact with us on social media. That's my email. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time. And then I would like to say, as I say thank you, before we go to questions, Lauren, if you had anything you'd like to add.
No, that was fantastic, DJ. I even learned some new stuff. So please, get engaged with us. Go to our website. We hope to see you on Saturday at Bird Day. And we have some questions coming in, DJ. So I'll ask them for you.
Great.
So to you. So the first question, I like this. Could you do a field trip in my village, El Portal? We're a bird sanctuary. Maybe I could answer that. I mean, we're field trips all over the place. Maybe it's something we could add though, DJ, for a potential field trip. I know, as DJ mentioned, we have our youth field trips as well now. So what do you think, DJ?
Yeah, it's certainly something I'd like to take into consideration. I love going to different places and such. And I'd love to talk to our field trip coordinator. Brian Raposa is a phenomenal birder. He runs our regular birding field trips. I run the youth birding trips, so I'd love to talk to him about the potential for that as well. But it's certainly a possibility for sure. So thank you for suggesting that to us.
All right. We also have just a comment here. Brian Raposa is the best. Thank you for our field trip programs. Brian Raposa is our field trip coordinator, and he is a fantastic birder.
Yes,
Any homeschool programs, DJ?
So any homeschool programs? Well, that's certainly something. You have my email. You can reach out to me. We are in the process of figuring out how we want to do either on-site programs just for any kind of youth group, homeschool group that would want to join, or setting up a field trip elsewhere and having a birding field trip for specific youth groups such as homeschool programs. So I'd certainly love to try and set something up that works for you and what your capabilities are. So please reach out to my email, and I'd love to chat with you about that more, Arlene, and figure out if we can get together for a fun program. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, TJ. We have another question. So you, from Norman, you mentioned purple martins. We live in North Carolina and favor purple martins. After several years, we have finally attracted them to our backyard. We have provided a purple martin birdhouse and located the house in a perfect location. We enjoyed them last year and look forward to their return. We are beginners and want to know how a bird travels to South America and then returns to the same location each year. Can you explain how they're able to find the exact location? Sorry, Bard, thank you.
That's a really great question. And, the scientists still kind of figuring that out. How is it that a bird is able to do something like that? But one of the leading theories, and there's evidence to back this up, is that they're somehow able to attune into the magnetic fields of the Earth, the magnetic poles. And by utilizing that information that we can't see or hear or touch or anything like that, they're able to kind of use that as some type of mapping system to help them go, where they need to go. And we think it's maybe the same for sea turtles with the big migrations that they do. But yeah, purple martins have really strong site fidelity, meaning they are really strong in going back to the same site year after year. So, Norman, I'm jealous that you're able to get purple martins established because now they're going to keep coming back. I tried for years to get purple martins established, my parents' backyard when I lived with them growing up, and I never could. I just didn't have quite the right habitat. So that's so exciting that you got them there. And yeah, the kind of the theory about that is by tuning into the Earth's magnetic poles and then allowing that to form some type of mapping mechanism for them to get to where they need to go. It's a great question.
So we have a couple questions about the email again and the QR code. Do you want to pull that up, DJ, just so we could have that?
Yeah. So I'll go back to sharing my screen.
So we'll put the QR code up, and you could scan that with your phones to get to our website, and you could again sign up for our newsletter, stay connected with us on social, and then also the different ways you could reach out to DJ by email. So we have another question. We live in North Carolina. Is there a local chapter that will deal specifically with birds that are local to our area? Definitely reach out to us. We could connect you with National Audubon that might be able to connect you to your chapter. So definitely reach out. There's chapters all throughout North America. All right. Any other questions? All right, DJ, I want to ask you a question. What's your most memorable birding experience?
Oh man. Okay, yeah, I think I got it. So this one time, this is funny. I found a great horned owl nest. It was the first time I ever located one. The first time I found a great horned owl nest, it was near my house. back up when I was living in Western New York. And I would go and I'd observe the owl nest, and I would see, the chicks go from just a cotton ball with eyes to then fledging the nest. It was a great thing to see. But the one day, this is when the fledgling was still very young, very small, was in the nest, and I had been trying for weeks to get my father out there. I'd be like, Dad, come on, you got to come see this nest. It's awesome. You'll see an owl and such. And spring in Western New York is not, a great time to go outside for some folks. But my dad was finally like, okay, you keep bothering me, I'll go with you. So I dragged my dad out through the woods. We're watching. And we're looking at the nest, and there's the female owl in the nest with the fledgling. And I'm like, see, Dad, isn't this great? He's like, yeah, this is cool. Then all of a sudden, there's a flock of Canada geese, over to our left, just going absolutely bananas. And I'm like, man, what's going on with the geese? That makes no sense. What's happening? And I look, and soaring above them is an immature bald eagle, causing those geese to go berserk. Next thing I know, that eagle changes course and starts heading directly for the great horned owl nest. And I started elbowing my dad. I was like, something crazy is going to happen. And this bald eagle lands, right above the great horned owl nest. It's looking down in the nest. The mama great horned owl is looking up at the eagle, which is clearly a threat. Maybe to the chicks, maybe it's territorial, not too sure. And the mom great horned owl is looking right up at this eagle, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Then out of nowhere, the male great horned owl, the female's partner, dive bombs and slams into the eagle. Wow. And then they just start going at it. They're like fighting each other. They're like flying, dive bombing each other in the air. And, eventually both disappeared. And I was so nervous. I thought maybe the male, got killed by the eagle. I didn't realize how, tough great horned owls were at that time. And then the next day I went back to check on them. And I saw the female owl in the nest, and I saw the male owl just like staring at me like, I'm the man. So it was a really cool experience. That was my
wow. That's an amazing story.
Yeah. It's like, see, Dad, that's why you go outside.
Yes, love it, love it. All right. So we have 4 more minutes. Any other questions for DJ or just about Tropical Audubon? All right.
All right. Yeah. So go ahead and stop the screen share. And then Alejandro, all yours. Thank you again.
I have a question. How early can you take your child to one of these experiences?
So for like what experience in general, like one of our field trips or just any kind of birding experience?
Field trip.
So the youth field trip, we have it designed for ages 10 to 17, just because you don't want to have too big of like a giant gap. For bird day, all ages welcome, of course. For our adult field trips, they're not like, they don't exclude children, but they're a little bit more intense. There's a bit more traveling, and they do faster bird identification and those sorts of things. So, we do have those different types of programs for different ages. Yeah. But as far as like just regular educational programs go, like we'll do stuff with school groups and other youth groups. We do them of all ages. I just gave a presentation about birds and wildlife for a Montessori school with pre-K.